Hello, it's Sam from Cultaholic Wrestling and back by popular demand. Big old sexy Mitch. Oh, ladies and gentlemen.
Mitch. Is that my new nickname?
Mitch, I can't remember which side you're on, so I'm just going to give it both. I'm going to be like...
One of them.
Mitch, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, maybe missed last weekend's news, do you want to give them a quick recap?
Yes, I will. I'm starting to feel a bit like Dolph Ziggler introducing myself at the start of every show. But yes, my name is Mitch. I'm the editor-in-chief over at Cultaholic.com, and I am responsible for our news output. So awesome. It's a privilege to be here talking news with you on this Saturday morning.
Honestly, Mitch, you're a lifesaver. We've had just, again, this weekend kind of double bookings and all sorts of stuff going off, and there's pay-per-view stuff to do, and there's all sorts of insanity. So thank you, as I know the site is going to be pretty busy as well. So without any further ado, I guess we should crack on with it. Let's take a look at all the headlines. AEW's Tony Khan has called out WWE's Nick Khan in a weird social media promo. Has the reason why New Japan and WWE started talking been revealed? And AEW have revealed a brand new women's title. Find out what it looks like in a bit. So we kick things off this week with the bizarre news that AEW president, CEO, general manager, and head of creative Tony Khan took to Twitter to issue a bit of a weird challenge, I guess I want to say, a challenge to WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan. As seen in the video, you can find it yourselves, it's out there online. Tony Schiavone introduces Khan as they prepared for Dynamite on TNT, which is the go-home show for Sunday's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Well, what does Khan say, Mitch? This is where things just start getting weird. I clicked on this and I was like,
bizarre.
What?
It was the weirdest thing to wake up and see first thing on a Saturday morning. He started by saying, thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate it, Mr. Schiavone. And as we get ready to go live tonight on Dynamite on TNT, I just want to address as the Forbidden Door, because we all know Khan himself is the Forbidden Door. I read in The Observer today that New Japan Pro Wrestling have had talks with WWE's president, Nick Khan. Well, Nick, I have to say, if you've been talking to New Japan Pro Wrestling for 2 months, you've gotten a lot done. It's so weird, Sam.
It's strange. He went on to say, just in the last 2 weeks, I've had Yuji Nagata, Ren Narita, and Rocky Romero on AEW. I've reunited Roppongi Vice. I've had the New Japan IWGP United States champion Jon Moxley defend the title successfully on our show, retaining it, and I have future plans for New Japan Pro Wrestling for the US title. So you really must have got a lot done in the last 2 months, Nick. And in fact, I think there's only room for one Khan in the wrestling business, Nick, and it's me. It's Tony Khan. It's not some con man from Connecticut. Have a fun show tonight, Nick. See you on Dynamite. Now, the tongue is clearly planted firmly in the cheek here, and it's just bewilderingly strange to just as an entire situation where it's, you know, just kind of hitting back and you know, throwing the AEW hat into the ring in terms of the New Japan US working relationships. But I don't know, like, you've kind of got to, on one hand, applaud him for having the kind of just the creativity to do it and go for it in like such a wrestly manner and address it that way. But at the same time, it's kind of like, what?
I mean, it's got us talking, and I think that's what it was meant to do. So fair play to Tony Khan for that. But this is one of the most bizarre things I've seen in a long time, and I think I liked it. Which is a really weird thing to say.
I found myself smiling along with it as in terms of like, oh, it's a little bit cringe, but you know, it needs to be a little bit cringe. That's kind of the point of it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the wider conversation, though, this is interesting because obviously when the news broke yesterday regarding WWE and New Japan, I think pretty much everybody was kind of realizing that New Japan are working with Impact, New Japan are working with AEW, that's that. But yeah, it's just kind of throwing a little bit of uncertainty over that. Could WWE take New Japan away from those two companies if they were to work together? Would WWE even be willing to maybe play ball with, you know, some other companies for the first time in many years? And have a bit of a mutual thing going on? I guess, you know, we'll find out as and when things develop, but we'll keep you posted with any updates. So keeping it with the WWE New Japan relationship situation and all of the speculation that's going on around that, it was reported by the Wrestling Observer newsletter that WWE, instigated by Nick Khan, have opened conversations with New Japan about becoming their exclusive American partner. it's. I think we touched on it there just before. It's almost alien. I don't know how to process the idea of WWE actively working with another company.
No, it's a very strange concept, but PW Insider have put a report out overnight that might offer some insight into why WWE are doing this. And it all centres around a individual we thought had departed WWE, and that's Daniel Bryan. So PW Insider have added to the debate, saying that sources from each company say that in these communications that they've been having, the main crux of it has been over the potential of Daniel Bryan being able to potentially work some dates in New Japan. It also says that the discussions between the two sides have been going on for several months, but obviously nothing has happened yet. I mean, we thought Daniel had left WWE at the end of April.
Yeah.
This could be very exciting because we know he's spoken very openly about wanting to work with other people in different promotions.
I mean, if Daniel Bryan, perennial, just good guy all round Daniel Bryan, if he's the guy that kind of revolutionizes WWE's modern side and gets them to actually start collaborating with other people and recognizing the wider world of wrestling, it's just another one in the win column for Bryan, isn't it? But at the same time, I always felt like maybe he would leave for a little bit if there was no way that they could reach any sort of mutual agreement in terms of contract with him working elsewhere. I always felt like he'd leave for a bit and then come back. I don't know. I felt like he would return to the company either, on screen or as a backstage role. But the idea that this could lead to more collaboration between the two. If WWE are willing to not be an exclusive partner, it does mean they're going to have to, acknowledge other companies as and when they have to. But it's, I don't even know. It's just strange.
Sam, I don't want to encourage too much fantasy booking, but who would you like to see Daniel Bryan wrestle from New Japan?
Tomohiro Ishii, Shingo Takagi, Kota Ibushi, but please, neither of you die. And just don't hit each other too hard. There's so many names and so many dream matches. I mean, Zack Sabre Jr. You could have all sorts of stuff going on. I think you could even put Bryan in there with somebody like Toru Yano, and you could have like a more comedic element. The thing is, if he's going over to New Japan, it's obviously not going to be, like, I'm going to be there for 5 years. It's going to be quite a limited thing. So I imagine it'll be a series of marquee bouts if it is some sort of working relationship. But I'd ideally like a kind of cross pay-per-view, if that was possible.
That would be great.
That would be great. Interesting. But, with those situations, I imagine booking those is a nightmare.
I would not like to be... Well, I would like to be in that creative room, but not involved. That sounds like it would be...
We're going to do Roman versus Okada. Who wins? Like, how do you navigate that conversation?
Yeah, that would be very difficult. This is one of those situations, and my head just goes a little bit wild here, where can you imagine if this was 20 years ago and sort of these reports weren't coming out as frequently and Daniel Bryan just showed up in New Japan and you knew nothing about the relationship?
It'd be like when Jericho rocked up. I remember me and Jack just sat watching it, just going, and then just cracking on wrestling. What's this? Boom! And it was like genuine shock and genuine, there's something nice about the idea that this could just kind of come from nowhere if they do agree on a deal. So turning our gaze to last night's WWE SmackDown, Aleister Black and Big E were not in attendance and were quite notable by their absence, as there was no follow-up on the attack on Big E last week, and a lot of people were expecting that to at least push forward a little bit this week. But PW Insider are reporting this was actually a creative decision that was made to let the story hang for a week and to not rush the feud. So for once, it was a case of creative letting things breathe for WWE. They report that Black was at TV, as was Big E, and they could easily have followed up with a Black promo, but opted to hold off in order to slow the story down.
Have we entered, some sort of alternative universe?
I don't know. I've just had this feeling. I think I've said it on 6 news videos now, so people are probably sick of hearing me say it. But it just feels like we're entering this new window of opportunity for WWE. Everything's just kind of going a bit And it's maybe we'll get that big and like huge amazing things will happen, but we gotta just wait and see. But yeah, that was the reason why Aleister Black and Big E were not present last night. But we also have 2 title matches set for next week's SmackDown. We got the tag title match between the Mysterios and the Usos. The Mysterios going to be defending their titles, of course. I don't expect them to drop it here. It'll be a very big shock defeat. There's still time to make father-son double set toys and all the T-shirts.
They haven't sold nearly enough merch yet.
And then we also have an Intercontinental Championship match pitting Apollo Crews against Kevin Owens, with Commander Aziz banned from ringside. And why is he banned? Well, this should be a blinder of a match anyway. But they wrestled last night on SmackDown, and Aziz hit the Nigerian nail on Owens from the outside in order to stop an Owens pin. It led to a DQ, and then the natural next step is, of course, to ban Aziz. But it's not going to really stop Apollo, I don't think. We saw what he was capable of when he went after Big E with steps. We've seen, how vicious Apollo can be in a one-on-one situation. And I don't think he's quite had Commander Aziz at his side long enough to have gotten lazy, in a heelish way where he's like, I don't need to look after myself anymore. Somebody else will do it for me. Like the Shawn Diesel type thing. But
there's a very fine line to it, I think, and WWE traditionally have actually been quite good at playing it when there are these big enforcers. I know it's easy to fall into the trap of every time a heel champion loses a match, it's because of DQ. But we know Apollo can go. This is going to be a great match.
Well, this is it, and it's one of the first steps, so you may as well get one of the more out there cliches out of the way first. The manager jumping in to make the save. That's that done. The big old tropes out the way. We can move forward with something interesting. But yeah, next week should be a hell of a match. And looking over to Raw for next week, we have The Miz set to make his first appearance on WWE television since suffering an ACL tear at WrestleMania Backlash. They announced last night during SmackDown that he will host Miz TV on Monday's episode of Raw, and Raw Women's Champion Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair will appear as Miz and John Morrison's guests. Of course, Miz, the injury actually stemmed from the WrestleMania Backlash, but he lost to Damian Priest in a lumberjack match, and during the match, when Priest landed on Miz's legs after a spinning kick on the top rope, that's when the injury happened. Now, Meltzer noted at the time the severity of the tear wasn't known, but it seems like the speed that you're coming back from that seems like it wasn't quite as bad as it could have been, which is great news because, the last thing we want is another wrestler to have to suffer through a long-term injury. So,
I'm sure we'll see more on Monday. If I wouldn't be surprised to see Miz turn up with a crutch or something. Just
to he's going to milk it. He's going to sort of...
Absolutely. I can't wait for the promo that comes with this. This doesn't necessarily mean the Miz is back to full fitness, of course, because torn ACLs in any capacity, they hurt.
Absolutely. We can't undersell the severity of that injury. And at the same time, he's out there, he's doing his segment, so it's less intensive on him in terms of physical activity. So, if he can be used in a way where he can get over, and we know the Miz can just talk and talk and talk, may as well let him. Absolutely.
And he's such a good talker, he can get himself over and other people over at the same time. And we're talking about a match here between Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair that, I don't want to be crude, but it's not we don't want to see it. I think people are nervous. So hopefully with the Miz's talent, he's going to be able to generate a bit more excitement in this than there already is.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. And finally, we head over to AEW, where a new women's championship was unveiled last night. So during this week's episode of Dynamite, AEW Women's Champion Hikaru Shida was presented with a new version of the AEW Women's Championship to celebrate her 1+ year reign as champion. Now, Tony Schiavone presented Shida with the new championship belt, and she thanked the capacity crowd on hand. She will defend the title against Britt Baker at Double or Nothing this Sunday. And in terms of the design of the belt, it's very much the same sort of design. It's just been scaled up a bit. It's had diamonds added to it. It's had, more detail, more fine details being added to the belt. And it was already a very intricately detailed belt anyway, but they've just scaled it up a bit because it was, quite small. It was like, maybe that. Now it's like this. So they've blown it up. They've just, dragged on Photoshop. They've made it bigger. They've added some shiny bits. It looks great. But yeah, it's something people were calling for quite some time. It was just a bit small. It was just a bit small, but the design itself was never the issue, I think.
No, nothing really to add here. I think you're spot on. They've done the right thing. Great idea. I look forward to I very much look forward to Britt Baker winning it on Sunday.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But that is it. That's it for your first dose of lovely Weekend Bumper Wrestling Weekend News with myself and Mitch. We will see you again shortly for video 2. Catch you in a bit. Have a lovely Saturday morning. See you soon.